Yor di Divinoid. Has everyone got a copy of the text, Foundation of All Good Qualities? Yeah? Before we were studying the text, Foundation of All Good Qualities, right? Through the, studying the Buddhist teachings in that way. Yeah, and Eddie was telling us that we left off on the section dealing with joyous effort. Yeah.
Yeah. Roton Dava the Karate Tanas, Nazo Gasaguru, Nambichig Lam Jeta, Nambichig Lam Jetan Davote, Ma Pariji Digala, Gotelia, and Lord Shinjamalupa, thank you, and Gegete, Ketchambo Eastern, Roa, Chinyete Tursen, Gotelia, Ketchambo Tombote.
What is the approach here? Well, when the Buddhist path, the way one progresses through the Buddhist path is laid out, then you have a certain order of things. And at the very beginning, you have the importance of relying upon a teacher who can teach without errors. So of utmost importance initially is relying upon the spiritual teacher who can teach unmistakenly.
Yeah. Okay. Tendiji la tenguare, tendiji la teni, teni, chigu lojo che, chigu nyole chenainda, chigu lojo chenainda, tendiji la teni, nyole machena, mando ya notu yonsigires, tendiji la te de kechamo shubijires.
So it's necessary to rely upon such a person, right? And then once you've relied upon a person, you can begin to study and practice the Buddhist teachings. If you don't rely upon such a person, then there's the danger that you make mistakes or you err. So you must rely upon such a person at the outset.
Okay. Then, nambichignola logisheria. Nema shinye dujaji do chene. Chola mutuntaji sene. Ani di chwa semo ani pe man te chwa na ji chene giba ina mutuntaji semo sene. Ani chwa kyalgina chola thaba thobure ya. Tindi
the tradition talks or has stories about people who have relied or have come into contact with evil teachers and what happened to them after that. For instance, there's a story of a person who met with a teacher who gave the advice that if you were to kill 1,000 people, and take their thumbs and make a necklace out of them, then you wear that necklace, you'll attain liberation. Yeah. So these type of things, stories about these type of things happening when people meet with a bad teacher. It said that this person had been able to kill 999 people, yeah, and when he met Buddha Shakyamuni. He had planned to kill his mother, right? Because he had one more person to kill before he got the full number, and he couldn't find anyone else to kill, and so he developed this plan to kill his mother. But then he saw someone off in the distance. He thought, oh, oh, that's good. Now I don't have to kill my mother. I'll go kill this person. So he chased after this person he saw in the distance, but it didn't matter, how far he went. He wasn't coming any closer to this person. Yeah, they just kept they remained in the distance. Eventually, he caught up and met the Buddha, and the Buddha taught him the Dharma, and it was then, of course, he changed his attitude after having received teachings from the Buddha. And hence, it's very important that we rely upon a teacher who can teach, an unmistaken path, or teach the path unmistakenly. Now, of course, if you were to meet a person like is described in this story, it'd be rather easy to develop doubts about the person, right? I mean, you're quite likely to have suspicions about that type of teacher. But still, there are other cases in which in which case the mistakes are perhaps not so apparent or extreme. So it's important that we use our intelligence from the very outset to analyze whether this person is capable of teaching an unmistaken path or not. And this is, in fact, what the root of the path. As it says, the foundation of all good qualities is the kind and venerable guru. Correct devotion to him is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon him with great respect. Since at the outset of practicing Buddhist teachings, we must rely upon a spiritual teacher. Whether we're practicing or studying, we must rely upon the spiritual teacher, right? And therefore wisdom is necessary from the very get-go, isn't it? Because you must consider whether the path that they're teaching is a mistaken one or an unmistaken one. And you need wisdom to understand that, don't you?
Okay.
The second verse says, understanding, the second verse reads, understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once is greatly meaningful and is difficult to find again. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly day and night takes its essence. This verse speaks about the great importance of having a human body like our own. In other words, this is teaching us to appreciate just how valuable it is to have an opportunity like this one. You have to appreciate what the good qualities of a human life are and respect that.
Okay. Marusu litente chipo mare shadu ripa yosa de chipo kechambore sewa mare. Litente da sende ni cha moje yobi. Sende ni chepa tela ani lide da sende ni yondu chene. Ta marusu mutsen dinar kari du na ya. Du tu ya. Doduna mandu mutsen tedu de bachi zo tu ya. Dita lido senil da kechesho.
Here, we might talk about a human body, but actually it's more than just the body. It's more like the fact that we have both the human body and the mind coming together here. So it's not just this flesh and blood, but it's that together with the intelligence that we have as humans. So you have the mind together with the body, providing us with an opportunity in which you can achieve basically anything you set out to do. With the fortunate circumstances of a human body and a human mind, you can make your life meaningful.
Okay? Me little send any chabaita, Marusu me annual yard, me yard, me nagu yard, and me jail.
Hori.
Dindita, me say over ita, Marusuya, Zunzo Checheni. Shipan Zuzu Checheni, Marus Mutin Dinalia, Karina Dutuya. Dindita Marusu said you Pacheaga, and it's Tamaducha said over the chance and over to visit the pitches Samarina, Marusuya, Tunchisiva, and Marusuya said no cheche, Shibuchi Yobate, and if I pull out Samara. These are Shibuchi, Lida Sandalia, Kishopcheni. That chief, Yaya Jitamatuna, or Katu Rotubach, Rotu.
We have this human body and the human mind come together. And so we have human ears, and we have human eyes, and we have the human nose, we have a human tongue, right? We have the senses of a human, don't we? And therefore we have this human mind and the ability, the intelligence to really put these things to good use. So then to go off and do things that muddy the mind, for instance, by taking drugs and taking alcohol, really we're just putting to waste and really staining this human mind and this good opportunity that we have. Because with these things we can accomplish what we set out to do. So it's very important then that we respect what we have and not do things like wasting the good opportunity through the use of these types of substances.
Okay? On the kitchen board, Marusu Munagane, Santi.
Making our lives meaningful, right? So whether or not, we, just a moment. So whether or not our lives are meaningful depends on our mind, doesn't it?
Okay. Or to say, the Isamando, Dazachen, Rangi Sandalia, Anti, Lozang, Yajitaya.
So we need to take care, train our minds, engage in some training, and work to improve and develop ourselves. Geshe is always saying that we need to try and increase our positive states of mind and reduce negative states of mind as much as possible. But isn't this the purpose of the Buddha's teachings? To help us to increase positive states of mind and to reduce negative states of mind as much as possible? Those are the Buddha's teachings.
Understand? Positive negative negative
Whether someone's considered a good person or a bad person really depends upon whether they have positive or negative states of mind that predominate. Isn't that the case? As somebody who is always subject to negative states of mind, always arising and very, very negative in this way, is considered a bad person, aren't they? Whereas somebody who seems to always have a positive state of mind and acting positive in this way is, everyone fawns over, making a big deal about, oh, what a good person this is. Yeah? Whether you're considered a good person or a bad person depends on your states of mind, doesn't it?
Okay. Marusu semi yajitaya taya ani tandara lo shedika yajitana tan devo gembo chadiga ya testo khawaimba roa nje ita tandara pe chi ta matana ani marusu kichi ya jido ya ani gembo ya chando ya demo beta mazu chomu kapachi ya lewa teya kadile yo hapo ya ma nje ita nya ganjila.
Not only is this human life very meaningful and precious, but also it's important that we seize that we really try to improve our minds now that we have the chance. In particular, it's easier to improve your minds when you're young. More difficult to improve the mind when you get older, right? The older you get, the more difficult it becomes. But not only that, so I mean, it's easier to do when you're young, but also things change from moment to moment. You become old, and death could come at any time. You don't know. You don't know when you're going to die. So this life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Within the Buddhist teachings, we talk about achieving different states, and they say that if all of the necessary conditions come together, then you can, in this very lifetime, become a Buddha. You can achieve Buddhahood, assuming, of course, that the degree of your joyous effort is large enough or sufficient. If you're not able to achieve Buddhahood in this lifetime, then next down from that would be to achieve liberation. And you can indeed achieve liberation in this life. If you can achieve liberation, then at the very least you need to make sure that you will take rebirth as a human in the future. So these are the three levels. Yeah? We need to make sure that that we're going to get at least one of them. That's why the second verse ends with the two lines that read, "Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly day and night takes its essence," achieving one of these levels.
Okay.
Actually, tonight we were meant to pick up on the topic of joyous effort. And what is joyous effort? The joyous effort is a delight in virtuous activities. Is it this is the enjoying of virtuous actions.
Understand?
How does this relate to the verse we have here? Well, it mentions the wish to generate the mind that unceasingly day and night seeks to take its essence, right? So here you've got these different types of essences that Geshe just mentioned: Buddhahood, liberation, or rebirth as a human life. So we want to always be thinking to achieve one of these three, at least one of these three levels, and there is a sense of delight or joy that goes along with the work that requires it. Because joyous effort here isn't just simply working hard, but rather it is a sense of joy that accompanies this continuous and constant wish to achieve one of these three levels.
Okay?
In explaining joyous effort, the scriptures talk about the power of relinquishment. What is this power of relinquishment? Well, when practicing or learning about the Buddhist teachings, there's a certain level of effort that you can put in on a daily basis. So day after day, time after time, you can constantly, make this amount of effort. Now that's important. This is what the power of relinquishment is knowing the amount of effort you're able to sustain day in and day out for a long period of time and keeping that up.
Okay? Or those Javaina, only Javiti, several days. Jen, you might change it. One of the Tashi, Dao cheese, Kalaja, only you shall by yellow.
This is important because without that, then you might, or excuse me, in doing this, then you achieve results. Right? If you lack this, then you might pick something up for a day or two, or even a month or two. But then, after a time, you get tired and you leave it aside. Yeah, and you don't end up achieving these results.
Okay, or two things. In the good important law thing. Tamando, Kandati Kansa. Gewa said, Mgewa said, Maruso G. Ani positive saving in the journey. You couldn't learn the Laga Cheg Dikana, Gawanda, Shawado, Gawanda. Negative saving in the journey. Do you want the John the journey? Anish, Shawato with the color, Luna Shawato with the color, Mgewa said, Roa, Budna, Gawato Mgewa said, Chichi, Lagadua.
We talk about virtue and non-virtue, don't we? Well, what are these things? Well, when a positive state of mind becomes manifest, and under its influence we engage in certain activities, well, these are virtues. When a negative state of mind manifests, and we engage in activities under its influence, these are non-virtues.
It's a good new bullet. Then yes, so Nimachi, like a concha Tama, and the one G. Shamba the Nijan Jawada. Only Jana Pembi Samba, Japan Samba, the Jigu Kunilani. Anichi, Nimachi Laga, Susu Loka Culture, Suchavina, and the Samaya, Anichi positive show, Jutu, Roa, Yushawata.
We want to make everything that we do in the 24 hours of a day be virtuous. You can do that if you are motivated by a sense of loving kindness or compassion or the wish to benefit others. If you engage in things with the wish to help others, then everything that you do throughout the day can be virtuous. Geshe oftentimes comments on, the fact that we work and we work for wages. Now, a lot of people assume that because we work for a wage, then that our work can't be virtuous, right? But that's not the case at all. I mean, we need to work because we need a wage. Yeah. Without a wage, you're not going to have the necessary conditions. You're not going to be healthy. You're not going to be able to have what's required in order to accomplish virtue. So just because you take a wage in working doesn't mean that can't be virtuous. In fact, work is necessary. A wage is necessary. Yeah.
Or those journey, so Nimachi, Shawate, Gisho, Tutu, Asumu, Roa, Gumon. I money Dilaya, I give you Gunilani, I give you somebody near the journey, Mani Kusuna, I need your or those journey, it's a good more than the laws there.
With the proper motivation and even the work you do for a wage can be virtuous. So that in a similar way, if we cultivate this proper motivation, like loving kindness or compassion, then all of the different actions that we engage in throughout the day become virtue. They belong to a virtuous class of activity. Even if you, for instance, if you set the proper motivation before going to sleep, then the act of sleep can become virtuous as well. This is part of this line. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence.
Oh, Telematoya, not Gundala, Mamini, Techipo, Kojimare, Tetena, Yabuta, oh, Jaina said, Nine Gundala Mama Niva Jenny, and she go on what you're saying, it's also a woman or so. The Chipo in
But this line about unceasingly day and night trying to take its essence doesn't just refer to, for instance, not going to sleep, but really pushing on through the night trying to accomplish virtue. We are not getting any sleep. I mean, okay, if you can do that, that's wonderful. That's good. But it's not only what it's talking about. Yeah, not. You might think that, oh, well, I can't go to sleep. I just must sit up in the cross-legged posture and work at virtue. Not necessarily.
Okay.
In short, it's about correcting and thereby cultivating a positive motivation and then going to sleep.
Oh yeah. Mandu dini ma shini ani kawale lo kare chen lo nambi ki juni Geshe jagdi dini shini men lo ma re chawa chi len bo re chawa le guna ani chawa khandi chini len ge sana o sende lo gu senda dela ta pi na ta di sen ko ro kashi tuji yo ta so wa de shi de je ko kashi tuji yo o tetu lepchini said le ngare dela ta pi na chen lo gu ta de nyondon lo gu ya 제가 생기 니피톨이야 기위 샤와지 사뱅엔 뒤쳐서는 년로 덴롤 쉐요 게 생기 니피톨이야 머게위 사베징엔 뒤쳐니 마 수수는 년로 샤데 산두다 만두 돈로도 들릴 쉐요 진짜 있어 드니 그라사 디티데야 미다나
치부 그래서 미세 미타 치부
니스크는 이번에 지체 매바 좋아지 리소 요아 치 치버지 인디 지비 좋아져 봐도 시리 지스 리도 좀마지 까나 렌제 시지도 와라 내 시리 지스 리도 좀마노지 까나위 렌제 지스도 봐요.
Geshe would like to first introduce us to the objects of our joyous effort. That is to say, that what we apply ourselves to when we engage in things with joyous effort. And then later we can begin to look at what the divisions of joyous effort are, and and look more closely at the nature of joyous effort and all the little particulars. That doesn't concern us at the moment. First, Geshe would like to look at what are we applying ourselves to when we engage in things with joyous effort. Well, here, because after all, joyous effort is the delight in virtuous activities. What are these virtuous activities that we delight in? Well, it relates to things that lead to the three essences. Geshe just talked about the three essences, or the three essences: Buddhahood, liberation, and a human life. Correct? So we engage in the virtues that lead to these things with a sense of delight. Now, this leads into the next verse, which talks about what happens after death. Because in Buddhism, after you die, you don't just become nothing. Rather, after you die, you take a rebirth. So you could take rebirth in a happy realm, you could take rebirth in a miserable realm. If, for instance, a seed, which was placed in the mind through performing virtuous action in the past, were to become manifest, then you would take rebirth in a happy realm, for instance, as a human. If at the point of death, however, a seed placed in the mind by a non-virtuous action would become manifest, you would take rebirth in a miserable realm. Now, what is it that goes beyond? It's not just the mind, because at death you don't just simply disappear or become nothing, but the mind continues. And the mind, together with things like feeling and perception and karmic formations and so forth, go on with you. There's a number of different things as well. And then the mind, as well as the I that is imputed onto this collection of things. So this group travels together. But what determines whether these things go into happy realm or a miserable realm? Well, once again, the type of seed that becomes manifest at the time of death. So it says here, this life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow.
Understand? Mandu shidi kanya little hard. Little meta kanya. Roa. Little meta kanya yore. Send the dogura. Send the nyon ngate. Send la tapi ngate.
when you die, you don't bring your body with you. You leave your body behind. Yeah? The mind goes on. The mind together with the I that is imputed onto that.
Oh, okay. Oh, 아니 가사. body meta cancer di ka body ti thoya yo mare. Moshuna mistake da. Rawa. Shinjo ke liten naji ti ni thoyi buduna. Mi shida ta ya. Yonjo ikasa ji ta ya ne. Mistake bare. Kaisa meta to sa.
Once a person dies, the body is burned, right? If after a person's body has been burned, you see that person's body, yeah, you're making a mistake, yeah? If the body's already been burned, yeah, there's no body to see, yeah? If you see somebody's body, the body of a person who's already been burned, well, you better rub your eyes, wash out your eyes, yeah? Because that you're not actually seeing that person's body, yeah? That's a mistake. People sometimes develop this idea that they're seeing someone who's died, right? And that leads to problems, yeah? We're better off without these ideas.
Okay? What does it? That means, does it? That's showing us that. Number Juni, I show us a mass at it. This is Jayam. Joshima, you could Mabo Katisha. That was no pages Katisha, and it's Pachi Tabi. Ripajata Mubitone, and it's Sanju Sujabi, Josh Mashu, God, D. Tolia, and it's Tuchen Zeni. And showing us your marriage singing to the pa, repeat, Luda, repeat, Paka, Lunguka, where Lunguka, repeat, where repeat Kani. Who's Jenny? That's the Shibuji Jibotella Padre. Later. I'm going to show
Buddhism talks about past and future rebirths, how after this you die and you take another rebirth and so forth. And there's a number of different reasons that can be used to establish the existence of past and future lives. For instance, the glorious Dharmakirti is composed a text in which he deals with hundreds of different reasons that support the notion that there is such a thing as past and future rebirths. In fact, he refers to both scripture and logic in addressing in making his point. He deals with the ideas of people who say that there are no such things as past and future rebirths, and when it's appropriate to use scripture to refute them, he uses scripture. When it's appropriate to use logic to refute them, he uses logic. So if we were to go into all of this, we would find a great logical support for the notion of past and future rebirths, but of course we don't have the time to go into this in great detail.
나도 무슨 때라 니도 생이도와 리기녀레데 하미크다라 되죠. 됐어 버려. 생이녀레데 가와자고. 무슨 말이 되는데 야자고.
We can look at one of the essential points here. Is that as humans we have a body and a mind, correct? Now the substantial cause for a body comes from the sperm of the father and the ovum of the mother. When we begin to look for a substantial cause for the mind, however, we find that this does not come from the sperm and the ovum, but rather must be found in a prior state, from a past rebirth.
Okay? 다만은 리데 아니 코로 가서 년에지 코로 링마마를 깨지가마가 심하시네. 도스전에 산다바데 도스전 토와라. 리두 세니 년에서서 전이야. 제가 마토지피 버버 리기 생기 년에셔. 버버 생기 리기 년에셔. 파티 년에 너여셔요. 가이스나 리두 세니 지주제 주제 많이 봐 있다 군이 리만다 봐. 맞습니까?
If we look more closely at this, we find that however old you are, be it 20s or 30s, 50s or 60s, that from the time when we were born till the present, and we have a mind that has come to us in a continuum of similar type, that from one moment of mind leads to the next moment, and so on and so forth, from birth all the way up to right now. And similarly, I mean, the body, of course, has also been with us during this time, but going along in it, changing from moment to moment, moment to moment. What's actually happening here is that the body and mind have individual substantial causes that grow and develop simultaneous to one another. It's not as if at one point body acts as a substantial cause for mind, and in other periods mind is acting as a substantial cause for body. But you have different substantial causes for these individual things occurring all the way from the past to the present. So why might this be? Because body is material; it possesses form, whereas mind is immaterial. So they have individual substantial causes.
Okay. Then I said, but you, but I'm so, Pami Kuzho, but you push him ever say what? Or that she good one. Then Nami Geshe Karjak. Pami Kuzho, you only, you know, no, she shoes, for the laying water. Roa, such a laying water. No, she machine, such a yama. Pami Kuzho, you take a man, Manzo, century legal, Yellow. Every fertilized ovum doesn't necessarily lead to just through the sperm and the ovum coming together doesn't necessarily result in the birth of a being. Something else is required. In this case, the entrance of the substantial cause. So it's clear that simply through having the sperm and ovum come into contact, you don't necessarily get a sentient being. And what these other elements is required is the entrance of the primary consciousness, which is another clear indication. According to the Buddhist way of explaining things, then when a consciousness enters the conjoined sperm and ovum, you have a sentient being. Without that consciousness, you don't have a sentient being. So according to the Buddhist way of explaining things, then you must need something else besides the sperm and ovum. That is the primary consciousness. Okay? What do you
Where does this primary consciousness come from? Well, from intermediate state, in the immediate, but from a past rebirth. Yeah, from a continuum of previous rebirths.
Okay? What do you
we have a good opportunity in that now we have a human body. So we have this fortunate human life. So we need to take advantage of it and doing what we can so that we get it again. To achieve that, we need to accomplish virtue and abandon negativities. This is the way to take rebirth, or to be reborn as a human again. The text mentions the results of black and white karma. Black and white karma, or the effects of black and white actions and their effects. This is talking about projecting karma, actually. And how is projecting karma created? Well, you have the innate reifying view of the perishing aggregates, or more simply, this innate self-grasping, which acts as a root for this process. Under the influence of this innate self-grasping, a person might engage in a positive or a karma, that is to say, a positive or right action. For instance, maybe that person will decide to give up a non-virtue, like give up killing, or give up stealing, or give up sexual misconduct. Or maybe that person does something to benefit someone else. So still, at the root of the process there is a self-grasping, but they may engage in a positive action. For instance, doing something to try and help someone. That places a seed, doing that they create the projecting, a positive projecting karma.
What do you say? That to check once and those no, manzo the time is the near so check me. The time is the Kumaku man, yambi. What is from Jesha? Roa.
Giving up killing involves making a promise or commitment that from now on I'm not going to kill. Or stealing, from now on I'm not going to steal. This is a karma, or in English, an action.
Or Ninji Tabis on which Taya Jitata Kolo Chipaiba, Jitata Imba La, Yanchi, so Jabata, Majiba Lamba, Lasopa Jabaina, Ninji Shawate, and Magivile, Napiles,
This is a positive, or this action places a positive seed. A person might have the very same foundation, namely the innate reifying view, or this innate self-grasping. But rather than engage in a positive action, they engage in a negative action, like killing or stealing or some other non-virtue. Yeah? This is a negative karma, or negative action.
Okay?
When the effects of this action ripen in the future, they ripen as rebirth in a miserable realm. The virtuous karma places a seed in the mind, and when that seed ripens, then it results in rebirth in a happy realm. So this is the basic explanation.
Okay.
Both of these are the same in that they're causes for cyclic existence.
Yeah?
Within cyclic existence, there are both happy realms and miserable realms. The non-virtuous negative actions lead one to cycle within miserable realms, whereas the virtuous actions lead one to cycle within happy realms.
Okay. Or two. Then you manzo koa chipare ina koa nani denrushana marusuchi lo kumanseyago kokachi rabe yade ngenrushana di kokachi la do ya ita manzo denrushaya tashi chichego ya inji menchi.
Although these are alike in that they're still cyclic existence, if you're reborn in a happy realm, you have other opportunities. For instance, if you're reborn in a happy realm, you could have the chance or the opportunity to strive for higher paths. You have the opportunity to strive for higher things. You don't have that opportunity in the miserable realm. So it's very important that we work to take rebirth in happy realms, like those of the humans.
Understand? Narusu tanda mili toba ita, narusu chi, joa jimara mili denji chi toyaga, tashi chena, jaya, narusu koka duga.
Now that we have a human life and a human body, we have the chance to do something so that we get it again, don't we? We have that opportunity.
Oh, that's manzo.
If you look at an animal, since they're reborn in that type of form, they don't have that opportunity, do they?
전도리 자같이 이지면지도 전도리 자가 간도 거 자시만 밀리토트 받지 이지면지도
Since we have obtained this human body and life as a human, then we must do something better with it than an animal does. How can we? We need to do better than just being an animal, right? And what can we do? Well, ensure that we'll take rebirth as a human again in the future.
그것도라야 쿵그러사야요 차바셔야요 차도셔야요 내게 생각하면 좋아.
Animals get angry. Animals develop attachment. Animals feel jealous, don't they? Animals develop all the disturbing emotions.
Yeah. 다 전부터 이제 이런 거 같이 그런 걸 하고 봐.
But if they were to try and get a start in developing loving kindness and compassion, it would be very difficult for them, wouldn't it?
Yeah. 나를 소리 좋아해.
But we have that. We can do that, can't we?
Okay. 둘째니. 이제 이상한도 단기 기타 회식 끊이라네. 아니지. 자동라서 봐. 공연으로 왔지. 내자라서 봐. 근데 공연으로 왔지. 시 온길래 싸네. 내 겨와싸나? 아니, 내노르셰. 내 무겨와싸나? 내노르셰를 해야 돼. 근데 내다. 싸워꾸니 녀모니보테 내가 군주 대바라요. 로아.
What?
군주 대바라요. 인제브 아니 누가 대바라요. 다 말듯이 나와도 가와도 저와서 봐. 누가 다음으로지 요아로. 호텔 누가 대바라요. 이제 군주 대바 누가 대바 대대니 먼저 하고.
When we act motivated by this innate reifying view of the perishing aggregates, we then perform certain actions. If we perform virtuous actions, then those produce rebirth in happy realms, and if we engage in non-virtuous actions, then those can produce rebirth in miserable realms. But
아니 잡아라고 예무지 디파르시 아니 레지 사그러와 겨와이나 무겨와이나이다 이제 레트다 예무다 군주다 말아 레지 군주
Excuse me, I left out a bit. When we're motivated by the innate reifying view, then we develop, for instance, a disturbing emotion like anger or attachment or something like this. And motivated by these disturbing emotions, we then engage in, for instance, a non-virtuous action, which has the potential to produce rebirth in the miserable realms. Alternatively, we might engage in a positive action, and we end up taking rebirth in a happy realm. But this process is true origins, because you have the disturbing emotions and the innate reifying view, and you've got the karma as well. These are true origins which lead to, for instance, rebirth. And the body that you have would be a true suffering. There are other elements to true sufferings as well. It's not just birth, because it's also aging, sickness, and death. But these different things constitute true suffering. So you have true origins and true sufferings.
What?
With respect to karma and rebirth and very strong, excluding animals, would it be fair to say that other realms be literally interpreted, or was it more of a psychological sort of, meant to illustrate the sort of psychological
Are these different types of realms that Geshe is describing meant to be taken literally, or is it more an explanation of psychological states? Yeah. Rik Druk yorwa. Rik Druk say that because da jishindu kelenji chiribe on mena koranzu. Something to be taken literally.
Yeah. 딱 맞아. 냐와 두이다 대야지 미풍구야.
We don't see the hell realms or the hungry ghosts with our eyes, nor do we see demigods and the deities with our eyes, due to the subtle type, due to the subtle type of state that it is.
Yeah.
We see both humans and animals, don't we?
Yeah. That's it. 야, 안돼. 도바치 가요. 이거. Okay, you said toba iwe.
Was there a particular doubt behind the question?
I just think I've read His Holiness say it's not more practical to understand what a psychological state, because I do have a hard time believing that such wrongs exist, but I can certainly understand that they're trying to just illustrate certain emotions or certain states of mind they go through, so I can appreciate it, but I have a hard time believing that this is such a physical place.
You remember His Holiness saying that sometimes it's more practical to understand them as psychological states of mind, because you for instance find it quite difficult to believe that there would be such physical states like that. 그 경민을 밑에 등에만 대비기 나와. 근데 오늘 코란에서 샘기 섬로탄탄탄 샘기 섬로 드네 지레마 드네 섬로탄나 tos 드네 라랑카 데워레사 라랑카 데워 그소 juk 데워레스 드네 치 로비사 티가 코란 오늘 조스 릭샴바든소 tos 켈렌 제 갖고 두사 코란데 레라보 이제 제도기면 두스 제단 코란서 냐와 여사치당 던조 여스 사체든서 아유 마요레샤사 코란기는 이제 시라 제도기면 두스
식단 맛이 돈돌 진짜 먹었어요. 그러와. 진짜 먹비토네 저이고요. 이나야 배 빠지 제야지 요된데래서. 그런 간도 사이언스 대소가 세네 신체 가래 아니 차판으로야 판자네. 차파자네. 아니 나와 그 딜이야. 아니 차판으로데 유머 차파치 주 위디가 다가나 아니야. 신체보러 텔레 네? 사이언스 세보시에
There are indeed many reasons that support the notion of such realms existing, but indeed, this is a topic that needs to be thought about. In fact, as individuals, we need to really give it a lot of thought. But there are interesting things that we should consider when reflecting on this. Like, for instance, scientists have found that there are certain organisms that can get frozen in ice and stay in ice for 6-7 months, and only when the ice thaws, do they come out. But they still remain alive, even though they've been trapped in ice for that many months, right?
Yeah. Today is now that the need of which is a guy. Missy isa mare. Now that Chanya Sigiti Kaliape, Chapa to Moye mentioning, I bet Karsaguru. Gee, Johnny do my now. Yeah, Medu Moye mentioning, I may.
And really, these are the type of explanations that you get of the hells as well. Like, for instance, you take rebirth in a cold hell, and it's so cold that your body becomes one with the cold. Yeah, as if the body and the cold are inseparable entities. Yeah? Or like rebirth in the hell realms, where you're so hot that your body in the heat or the fire become one, inseparable entities. So actually there's an interesting parallel between what science is finding in the descriptions of these types of hells. As humans, if we were to be trapped in ice, we would die within a week, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah? Whereas there are some sentient beings that can be trapped in ice for 6-7 months without dying, right? What is that? Well, according to Buddhism, that is due to karma. Now, if as a result of past negative karma, then a sentient being is frozen in ice for 6-7 months and suffers from the cold, well, then logic would prove that they could remain for up to a year as well, if certain things were present.
What is 100 years? What's possible? What 1,000 years? It's possible. This is not. Therefore, yeah, this is possible. Possible, Reza. 이나야 나도 간다 이치 제 칼 가버려 미투한 내베스 이치 제 칼 가버려 했대 이치 제 무투 파티가 다때 데보 인지 말해 삼네 해야 쇼네 수수티나 치츠스는 아이 보트세 사송아 데이터 디나라 데보 이라면 디나라 무츠야지 다시 지게시에 우여가 있다 무츠야지 다시 제공과
Such things are possible. But yes, indeed, it is also hard to believe because we don't see these things with our eyes. Because such things are so subtle, it's difficult to believe these things. But if we just leave it at that, thinking, oh, it's hard to believe, and then think, oh, well, there's probably no such thing, well, then maybe we're being a little bit too lax, a little bit too loose. And then if you wind up, in such a state, you're stuffed. So now they tell us that, they're saying, hey, look, it's possible that you wind up in such a state, but there's things that you can do to avoid that, and therefore it's better that not to just think, oh, it's difficult to believe, we might as well just gloss over it. Better, to do what we can to avoid such a state in the first place.
Yeah. Dinor mutsuya tashi karche gorti nambi university javi oso chepa pomba majima lemba pomba budna mugewa to pana ani tino musi kare
What are some of the techniques or methods that we can employ to avoid ending up in that type of state? Well, give up killing, give up stealing, give up sexual misconduct. Don't engage in non-virtue. Those are the things that we're meant to do to avoid that. That's it, right? I mean, and those are things that we could, I believe that I could give it up, we think, or I ought to give it up, right? And we think an upstanding and good person is going to give these things up anyway, right?
Okay? Or do such. Today is Kartagoro. The Dunamando, Magewa Maduna, Dinner Mustipares, then the Shetaria. Yopa ten the Shetaria, the Lich. Now do you that? You know, Mugain Javere, Magewa Masana, Tino.
Well, the Buddhist teachings describe the results of non-virtues, even these ones that we don't see. I mean, they describe the results of virtue as well. So they say that these results of both virtue and non-virtue exist. It's important to point out that the Buddhist teachings say that if you don't accumulate non-virtue, it's impossible to wind up in those states.
Therefore,
and that way it's much easier, or it becomes very easy, right? Because if you don't have the cause for it, the effect is impossible. It's impossible for that effect to come about, right? So whether they exist or not doesn't really matter because you don't have the causes for it anyway.
Yeah.
Much easier, yeah.
Okay? Okay. Richireca, not the Richireca. Or do the Cheney, that's the Jinga, and Kunju Damado, Della Kunju Damado, Duma Dambas and Damajuna, Kunju Damado, Duma Dambas, Jitella, Kunju Damasayore, the Jin Duma, now I got right in that, what I'm also saying, me Duma in that, Zuze, and Duma Dambas, then you ginger.
Here you have true origins and true sufferings, two of the four truths. Now the true origins are the causes, and the true sufferings, rebirth as an animal or hell-realm being, or even as a human, are true sufferings. Yeah, cause and effect.
Okay. What do you say? Say Inas, when the Dendroshanaya, and the Duma Dembali Tayo, Roa, indeed, Monia Chena start. Militopa Chipo, then the Mania Chen. How about then the Yana? Better. Only to do Dumadu. Jita Tower Chejapi. Jita Jamo de Chune. Only Leg Gawaina, Magawaina, Koya, some Mogurach. Happy Dawa taught too much. Roa. How taught too much? Other Maretawala, that Jita Pangu, that Jita Nepote.
Even if you're reborn in a happy realm, you still have not achieved liberation from true sufferings. So rather than just seek more rebirth as a human again and again, we ought to seek liberation. But in order to achieve liberation, of course, we must apply a remedy to the very root of this process. We must eliminate what lies at the basis, which is this innate reifying view, or this innate self-grasping that Geshe was talking about. But to eliminate the root of the process and thereby achieve liberation, requires the wisdom that realizes emptiness.
Understand? Do
we understand the four truths?
Yeah.
Do we know the four truths? You've got true sufferings and true origins, which is what we've just been talking about.
Okay.
Then you have, on the other side, true paths and true cessations. Now, these are, the remedies and the outcome of the first two, or the remedy to the first two and the outcome of that.
Okay.
So the middle or second level would be to strive for liberation. Yeah. So the second essence that you might try and achieve is working to achieve liberation. The method for achieving such a state is the true paths. You must develop the wisdom that realizes emptiness. And then you must familiarize yourself with it until eventually you perceptually realize emptiness. When you perceptually realize emptiness, you develop within your own continuum a true path. Having developed this perceptual realization of emptiness, then you develop a direct antidote. So it's at that point that you can begin eliminating the reifying view, or self-grasping. But you can only begin actually eliminate these things. In particular, you can only eliminate the innate reifying view by developing a direct antidote to that, and that requires a perceptual realization and familiarity with it. But in the first moment, you perceptually realized emptiness, and you have this direct antidote. And the moment or the period following that, you develop a true cessation, in which the first level has been abandoned. The state of mind that realizes emptiness and these true cessations, in other words, the true paths and true cessations, increase and develop together until eventually you abandon all disturbing emotions together with their seeds, at which point the true cessation you have is called liberation.
Okay?
Remember, we're talking about joyous effort and things we apply ourselves to with joyous effort. So please don't be confused, because there are two things we've talked about. The first is accomplishing virtue and abandoning negativities. Yeah? So that we apply ourselves to accomplishing virtue and abandoning negativities, and we do so with joyous effort. And then, this leads to rebirth as a human, as Geshe explained. And then, in order to achieve liberation, you try to abandon true sufferings and true origins and attain true paths and true cessations. And you do so with joyous effort. So two different perspectives.
Yeah. That church one, I somebody nije gone raw. That man do know ya. Geshe tar. Somebody nije shonju say last of the gone. So do na nije tashimba. 아니 싫어 타셔봐. 로아. 이거 타셔봐. 진짜 토구도 봐대. 아니 사실 공부터 비쳤 때마. 아 될. 상바도 이제 전부 이제 전부 정주지 센스야. 될 거를 줘. 됐음 맞대. 사실 공부터.
The third level involves applying oneself to cultivating things like loving kindness, compassion, the mind of enlightenment. You try to develop knowledge, and compassionate concern, and ability to their utmost extent, so that you become a Buddha. That you're applying yourself to these techniques to become a Buddha, the third level. This third level involves taking joyous effort in cultivating loving kindness, compassion, the mind of enlightenment, or wisdom, compassion, and ability. Yeah?
Okay. Well, that's the zone teacher. Did you shower? Go Rumachina, Sembachila, Sembita, said, Did you do Yami? Anchi, they do be tough. Anichi, Mutuni, Nimara region, the Susu, Anchi, Tisa Kazi, Lara, Dubatella, then you used to go.
Well, applying yourself to one or another of these virtuous actions, and thinking that I ought to accomplish virtue, and doing so, in a level that fits you, that is appropriate to you, each and every single day, is joyous effort.
Then you must have a jet. Then you use the Shabbat. You got that access. So go.
Yes, didn't talk about joyous effort itself. He talked about the things that we apply ourselves to with joyous effort. But he thought this would be better, given that this is the first, first day of the year here. Joyous effort is an antidote, a remedy to laziness.
Okay?
Things, the attitude that, oh yeah, one day I'll get around to that, yeah, one day I'll do that, one day I'll practice that. This constant procrastination, this is laziness.
Okay?
Also thinking that, somebody like me, I'm not capable of that. I couldn't do it. Somebody that knows a bit more could do that, but not someone like me. This also is laziness.
Oh,
there are a lot of reasons to think about, reasons why we ought to practice Dharma, and reasons why we're capable of practicing Dharma. There's a lot of reasons to think about with respect to these points, overcoming laziness. By reflecting on these things, we try to increase our enthusiasm, increase sort of inspire ourselves with joyous effort.
Understand? Okay, just a carrier. Marusu, but two months ago, you check there. I mean, Sanji or yes, you are. But 2 months to Sanji, Kake Mishia. Look at China Mishika. They are so Jijion. Marusu didn't need any. Marusu, not me, not yet. To Dema, Roa. Look at Tanjo, which is little for the hour. Or this is on the Tani. So, they are Tujuma thought.
They say that sentient beings, even down to just little ants, will become Buddhas. And if even a being like an ant can become a Buddha, and will become a Buddha, then of course humans like us can become Buddhas, because we have the intelligence of a human, we have the critical faculty and mental abilities of humans. So if we apply ourselves, then we certainly can indeed become Buddhas.
Yeah.
So think about this, inspire ourselves, trying, to work hard at these things with joyous effort.
Okay.
And don't underestimate yourself or look down on yourself.
Okay. What's that? I don't know. I should China. Should you amare? I'm not situation over yard, no chimboy over yard. Should you Tayamare? No, Chomata, I think, what should you Tayamare? See in a shame. Later, Manzo to put him.
Even if we find ourselves procrastinating, we should recognize that we shouldn't procrastinate. Yeah, because you can die when you're young. Yeah? Death doesn't make discriminations or distinctions in terms of age. Yeah? You don't know when you can die. People die when they're young. People die when they're old. So we shouldn't procrastinate because you can die at any time. Okay, so Geshe is going to leave his commentary there for this evening, having spoke a bit about this topic, and next time he comes, he'll talk about the divisions of joyous effort and so forth. Does Geshe see laziness more here or
different?
In Tibet, some people are lazy, some people aren't. In India, some people are lazy, some people aren't. In Australia, some people are lazy, some people aren't. Ani lelo yintang de yang chikpa. Dela shikchaya maro. Shikchaya de besi imbi gechero gechero.
Ta maluso. Tanadi kalse muro. Chibi nyolela lalin yukete ta India da kalse muro. Tibeti koroso pamboli kalcha rabaji ita. Rowa loso rabaji ita. Digitese manga yodo. Yandwa sabana worowa. Digitese nyuma yojilma.
And as far as numbers of people who are engaged in Buddhist practice, well, in a place like India, Tibet, I mean, the numbers are greater because it's their culture, because it's their tradition, their customs. But here in the West, the numbers are, there's fewer people engaged because it's so new. Yeah, but as for how people go, then it's basically the same. Any questions?
I'd like to ask a question. Talking about virtuous acts, despite what religion you decide to take up, whether it be Christianity or Hinduism or whatever, if you do a virtuous act in motivation for your incentives, like despite how it goes, do those beings end up getting in the same place? Like if enlightenment and rebirth is in fact true.
So if enlightenment and rebirth are in fact true, does a person who engages in virtuous actions with good motivation end up in the same place, regardless of religion, Muslim, Christian, so forth?
Different motivations involved in
정집 세야 디탕 거기서 시왕아치 데 무네 얘나 드니 줄룩 만다와요 와 아니 줄룩 만다와 된서 소소소소기 쿵롱 만다와요 리 미유 만다와요 래 이네야 거기서 줄룩 거리네야 드니 쿵롱 야포 체네 거기서 개워지 두베이나 드니 마옴발야 거기서 야포 체네 두나 거기서 마옴발야 거기서 사치 찍발라 레게데 베사
차와요 말
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. 내가 먼저 개첨벌해서. 말해서 치료 만나와요.
어디?
치료 만나와요. 봐 있다. 그는 넘버도 보지나. All sentient beings. 사제 세야데 가르래. 진짜 탐지하게 된다. 사제 공부 두고 알았어요. 사제 진짜 탐지하라 내리매 버전에 아니 사제 공부 두고 알았어. 그치세요.
This is an important question. In Buddhism, we talk about doing things for the sake of all sentient beings. Yeah? That as a motivation, or the motivation to achieve Buddhahood is for the sake of all sentient beings, without exception. So you work to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Yeah? Totally inclusive.
체도 상제 아니 남바 많이 비티 체도 상 문제와 근데 너는 지금 드니처는 사제예요.
It's not as if we think, I'm going to achieve Buddhahood for those sentient beings who are Buddhists, or I'm going to work hard so I can eventually, work for the welfare of sentient beings who are Buddhists and not the rest. That's not the case.
드니처는 사제입니다.
In fact, if you have that attitude, you won't become a Buddha. Achieving Buddhahood is impossible with that attitude.
가인스는 이제 슈레 차송하러 와.
Because one's compassion is partial. It's biased, isn't it?
대인은 남비 따와 가리나. 그러나 먼저 대인은 아니 치료 전다도 선체도 대지에 두고 그러와. 대 강제치는 두고래. 대 오면은 시와 되는 치료 전다지. 그러나 이식 치료 우선에 선체비 대두기나 미야야 27번째 시. 그래서 27번째 전. 아니 뒤도네 27을 우선에 아니 선체도 대죠. 남비 다시 따와 되래. 대노시 무슨 잡았지나 무슨 놈이 치료 지전에 소소. 아니 되니 무슨 이제 선체도 대죠.
아니 페란 출력된서 저 거리에는 그런 야보치니 두베이나 니 치파 두용 그래서.
하스테 게셰가
So, from a Buddhist point of view, then if you really want to work for the benefit of all sentient beings, then you're going to have to do so in a way that's appropriate to them as individuals. Like if you want to benefit sentient beings who are Muslim or Christian, for instance, then rather than adopt a Buddhist point of view and a Buddhist approach, then you would adopt a Christian point of view and a Christian approach in order to work for their sake. And therefore, in the guise, you might say, of a Christian, you work for their sake. Or if you're dealing with sentient beings who are Muslim, then you adopt a Muslim point of view and a Muslim approach to help those sentient beings. Yeah, so you wouldn't just bring along your Buddhist view and your Buddhist approach to help sentient beings who are Christians or Muslims, because that's not going to, agree with them, right? As for whether you end up in the same place or accomplish the same goals through practicing different religions, well, that's a difficult question.
가르쳤잖아. 나루서 그는 남발라야 아니 가르쳐고 남발이야 제가 마와 도대와 세도 맞는 근데 요 반지 엄마 봤대. 근데 이따 제가 마와 도대와 세도 맞어서 걸어서 다 찍고 돈 사제 두고 말해라요. 이따 이 집바인 줘야 집바인아야 저 아니 남비기 다시 또 잡아요. 근데 이따 먼저 크리스천다 무슬림도 코로스 따와 다 하기 전에 아니 제가 남비 진리셰빈 사제때 두투를 배서는 시작을 하고.
Within Buddhism, they identify different philosophical schools or tenet schools. You've got the Great Exposition School, and the Sutra School, and the Mind-Only School, and the Middle Way School. According to the Middle Way understanding, then so from a general Buddhist perspective, then you can't achieve Buddhahood if all you have is the philosophical view of one of these lower schools, like Great Exposition or Sutra or Mind Only. That their philosophical view is not enough, sublime, profound enough to achieve Buddhahood. Yeah? So, this is the way that the Buddhist texts explain it, that even some Buddhist schools don't have a view that leads to the attainment of enlightenment, not through that alone. If that's the case even within Buddhist schools, then, to say that through practicing Christianity or through practicing Islam, that you're going to end up achieving the Buddhahood described in the Buddhist scriptures would be quite difficult. If even some Buddhist schools can't do it alone with their view, it'd be difficult to do so with the view of others. But to understand, or to know whether Christians can achieve the Buddhahood described in Buddhist scriptures through their view alone, you'd really have to study the Christian scriptures. You'd have to look at what the Christian view is.
내가 우리 소식 달았더니 주도 있죠. 이시 그치네요. 그래서 미 다도 지지 주고요. 그래서 지로 달았더니 주도 있죠. 무슨 대치 주도 있죠. 아니 남비 그래서 지 주도 있죠.
As to the question, can you achieve the goal of a particular religious tradition by practicing that religious tradition? Well, you would think so. That if you practice the Christian teachings properly, then you end up achieving the results of the Christian tradition. If you practice the Muslim teachings properly, you end up achieving the results of the Muslim, tradition. And just as if a Buddhist practices the Buddhist teachings properly, they end up achieving the results of the Buddhist tradition. So you think that you can indeed achieve individual results by practicing individual traditions.
Yeah. 이제 이당에 면 로직에 지셔야 돼요. 그러나 말로서 Jesus 나오지라 남빙이네 손으로다는 아니 저시 간리스 자거랬잖아. 남빙이네 선지도 선지 삼바도가 선지 탐지에 대주 되고요. 봐이다. 그것도 뭐네. 오늘 산지는 오늘 선지 삼바도 진짜로 그것도 다시 자요.
Geshe oftentimes talks about Jesus, for instance, and then you think about Jesus from a Buddhist point of view. Well, you have to, consider the fact that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas work for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, from a Buddhist point of view, Jesus could very well be a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. After he is working for the benefit of so many beings, isn't he?
Yeah. Today, Nambishi Geshe Jana, Holy being,
So Buddhists would probably say that all holy beings are Buddhists, right? It doesn't matter, who they are, or it doesn't matter if they're Buddhists or not, yeah? Whether they're Buddhist or some other, tradition. It doesn't matter. If they're helping to alleviate suffering, that's enough. What's important is that for us as religious practitioners, that we seek harmony and unity with others. I mean, eventually whether working to achieve Buddhahood or working for this, working for that, that amongst the religious traditions, that they really seek a genuine type of harmony and peaceful coexistence with one another. Very important.
India, Lama Muslim da Hindi. Muslim da Hindi laaya mata masharaba so no.
Geshe lived in India for many years, where you saw Hindus and Muslims. Actually, probably shouldn't even say Hindus and Muslims, because really what you're dealing with are individual people who are mistaken, who are making their own mistakes, and individual people who create all sorts of sectarian and communal violence. In fact, so many problems come from these clashes that you're left with the impression, gosh, wouldn't we be better off without religion? So it's something we need to be quite careful about.
Sorry, I got you. Yeah, thank you.
So we'll leave it there for this time.